Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to the Frequency Labyrinth. It is time for another one of my conversation episodes, and I have another Adrienne here. Adrienne Craighead is joining us today, and we are going to talk about human design and tachyon chambers and all sorts of great things. But first, Adrienne, why don't you introduce yourself? Because my listeners know I suck at getting bios.
No problem. So I am a 3/6 sacral mangen, and I have the right angle of consciousness too. I'm all about helping people see things in a new light, explore what they already know, but with a new perspective is my cross of incarnation. And the passion project that really captured my heart in the year 2020 is Tachyon. And so I traveled in 2021 to visit a tachyon chamber, fell in love, and in 2022 I was opening up Charlotte's first tachyon chamber, and I'm sure we could get into all that. But I am a curiosity cat and I dive down rabbit holes all the time. And the fact that I know you are my go-to human design, gene keys, astrology, shamanic, guru. I love having friends in my circle who know so much about so much because I am an information, big appetite for information and learning new things. So I'm sure I'm going to learn some new things today.
And I'm sure I'm going to learn too. That's usually how these conversations go, which is what I love. Because, like I said, I have interesting friends, we have interesting conversations, and sometimes we bring them to this space. So, when I have conversations about human design, I'm always curious of how people got introduced to the process.
Yes. For me, it was at a Spark Sessions meetup in the year 2019 through a
Spark
girlfriend.
sessions. Oh my God.
That's how
Bring
we
me back.
met.
Yeah.
You and I met through Spark Sessions, and it still exists, but it's kind of on a little hiatus. So maybe one day, maybe this conversation starts to spark some things and we bring it back to life for a bit. But it was a friend of mine who was diving down the rabbit hole of human design. I remember learning, okay, here's what your chart looks like. And I started to do a little research. And truthfully, the first year or two, I was kind of turned off to it because different human design teachers were introducing different language around the model. I think I was one foot in the Raw camp and one foot in the Karen Curry Parker camp, and I
Okay.
wasn't able to connect all the dots because it was just confusing. So I put it on a shelf, and around 20, I started to dive in again, which was 2 years later. And I believe that just the more I learn, the more I get curious to go deeper. It was just within the last 3 to 6 months that I started to really dive into what are the four directional arrows. So
Yes.
there's still so much more I have to learn, but yeah, that was my journey towards starting to get immersed in this system.
Yeah, and most of my listeners know that when I was introduced to the system in I think it was 2013 because I was in a coaching program mastermind with someone that worked directly with Ra, Chatan Parkland, and I got my chart. I looked at it and I was like, "This is cool," but I was still coming off the corporate mindset, so it just didn't click. And then also, I do think it's important to find the right teacher. Chatan is incredible at his depth of knowledge around human design, but his I just didn't I come from a corporate background, right? So my teacher that I ended up studying with, she came from a corporate background. So I just resonated a little bit more there. And I think I was just in a totally different headspace several years later. So that's when I started getting into it. And then the gene keys after that, because one thing led to another, and then deeper studies in astrology. But
Let me put a pin in there. I want to ask you something because I've had this interesting conversation lately where I have this hypothesis that we can start to bring this school of wisdom to corporate America. And several of my friends in HR have said, no way. If it's
oh
strength
no,
program, yes, because people are self-reporting what they think they are, blah, blah, blah. But human design, no way, because it's got a little bit of woo woven in. And they're just like, corporate America will never. What do you think?
I find it interesting you say that for a couple of reasons. Number one, my The teacher that I took so many of her classes was Erin Claire Jones. She has a more practical approach to human design. And I mean, I got Virgo in my third house. I have a stellium in my ninth in Pisces. So I'm all about the esoteric stuff and the studies of the esoteric stuff. But it has to have a practical application for me. That's why my tagline says practical integration. I think that it's all in the approach. Erin has gone in to some corporations and brought in human design, so it can be done because it's been done. I do think it would be easier to introduce into smaller businesses that are really interested in looking at team dynamics in a unique way. And it's interesting that you say this because I just recorded an episode that hasn't dropped yet. Probably will drop before this one, around the question that I get often asked if someone from my past, 20 years plus in tech, asks, "What happened to you?" And I talk about that there is this practical side to these more esoteric modalities that can be used in your day to day very effectively,
Mm.
and that I could have used a lot if I had been when I was in corporate, right? So I think that I get the because it's not something that they would even consider, but I think it's how it's pitched and how it's brought in. Because I think that when you introduce human design and you talk about it being a channeled modality, right? Which it was. I've got the gate of doubt as my Mercury placement. I'm a skeptic at heart. My interest, though, is does it work? Is it effective? And I've used it enough. I've worked with other people that have used it enough that I see the results. And okay, all right, and we'll get into this a little bit more because this is one of my questions. I'm not a human design purist, though. For instance, if you're a purist, you're not going to use a Chiron placement. And I think Chiron is
I see what you're
incredibly,
saying.
incredibly important in the conversation. Some of the language that Ra uses is, I mean, he had the gate of shock. So, of course, the language that he used is off putting to some people. That's the reason why I like the gene keys, because you've got that shadow and gift thing going on that you can work with,
Mhm.
that I think is more welcoming, and also probably would play better in corporate environments.
And the only worry was because we're here in the South, that if you're an HR director, you can't ask anybody about, how old are you, what's your birthday, what's your blood type, what's your religion. So I wondered if they get to the birthday, birth time, birthplace, if their employees would start to bristle and be like, wait a minute, is this some kind of frou-frou woo-woo? Because I'm not going there. So we'll see, like you said, in practice, real estate offices, maybe chiropractor's office would be a great early team to start with. But
Yep.
I wonder if Truist Bank or Ally would take the call to
I'm
say,
If I'm not mistaken, at least somebody in the group I was in had worked with Capital One.
no.
So it was some sort of bank. And I was just like, that's interesting. Because, I worked for a Fortune 100. But there's all these little tiny teams within those big
Mhm.
corporations. And sometimes you have much more, hey, let's do something different for
Yeah.
team building than others.
And I applaud those HR directors who say, you know what, let's try it. If the
Hmm.
proof is in the pudding, let's see if this makes teamwork easier, if it makes creativity flourish, loyalty to the company, all those kinds of things I think can be stimulated through human design.
So, speaking of going down the path of, hey, that's not me, or bristling a little bit. When you looked at your chart, was there something that you looked at and said, that's not true, that's not me? And then you thought about it and was like, it kind of is me. Oh, okay, that's me.
I think when I first started to really explore all the layers of my chart, I'm a manifesting generator and I wanted to be like a pure manifester until I settled into, wait a second, I kind of get the best of both worlds. So I kind of wanted to be the idea and the visionary. And now I recognize I'm single definition. And I do
Mhm.
love that I can have the idea and make it happen, have the idea and make it happen. I wish I had a little more projector in me to be able to really read how to put the big projects together and the right people on the bus and the right seats. So I think I had a little bit of envy of all the types. Like I want it all. I want to be a reflector for a day and see what that's like. But no, I can't say that there's anything that's in my chart that I bristle against and say that doesn't feel resonant.
And your authority type is sacral?
I'm sacral authority
Okay.
and 3/6 for the profile.
Okay. The most challenging thing I think I had was the that I wasn't a sacral authority because I had always I trust my gut, but I have the splenic center, sacral, and emotional defined, and I'm an emotional authority. But when I really thought about it, riding that emotional wave, I was like, okay, I now understand the difference, and that's true, and that's probably the most valuable takeaway I have had from human design far
Mhm.
as like impact day to day.
One of the things I've noticed is I used to start as an overview. Yes, what's your type? What's your profile? What's your authority? But I like to spend early time talking about their undefined centers. And so we can see some possible friction in their life and explore it and maybe strategies to overcome that friction. And I've noticed when people are over the age of 40, they have done the work, especially if they're coming for a human design reading. And so, what normally might present to a 20-year-old is like, I've
Mm-hmm.
got an undefined root and I've got to do it all, and I've got an undefined head and I've got to know it all. Once they've reached a certain stage of life, of experience and wisdom, they have a lot of times already naturally, organically found their way to peace with those open centers. So that was an aha that I think isn't surface knowledge. Once you get there,
Mm-hmm.
you get there.
That is an interesting thing. Your favorite center to like, what's the first one you go to? Or do you have one that you automatically are like, okay, I want to know if this is open, if it's undefined, if it's defined.
Yeah, I think for me personally, like the throat being defined was like critical because it's curious to me when I'm reading charts and someone has an undefined throat, and I think, wow, they're very poised. They're not over talking, they're not under talking. They've really managed an undefined throat. So the throat would probably be my first interest, and then the root chakra, my second. And lastly, the head. I mean, we both see a lot of open head and open ajna, and I'm like, okay, these are my people because when they're just so rigid in their worldview, they're probably not talking to me about human design if it's not a part of what they believe is valid information.
That's interesting. I've got a lot of people around me that have defined head and ajna. Not necessarily clients, but just in my circle, which is
Yeah.
interesting. And then the first center I usually go to is splenic because it's going to tell me a lot about fear. We're like, where does fear live in their life?
Mhm.
And it's interesting because I my throat is fully open. I have no gates defined in my throat, so that was definitely a learning curve as well.
I looked at our charts side by side this morning, and we have all the same centers defined
Hmm.
except for throat. That's the one center I have defined that you don't, but all of
Yeah,
our others match up perfectly. And no, you have emotional solar plexus defined, and I don't have
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But yeah, it is a fascinating world to like sometimes I'll see a client and I've run their chart in advance of the reading, of course, and I'm like, hello, hello. I feel like I've known you all my life.
What is something that you've learned about human design that you actually disagree with the thought process?
I think that human design is a suggestion, an invitation, as Rob would
Right.
say. But I'm thinking about those arrows where I've dug deeper lately. And when I think about the perspective arrow, I think I see it as a way someone might manifest. I see that perspective arrow as if it's faced left, they want the details and the timeline and the plan and the budget. And if it's faced right, They're open to, I want these themes, I want to feel this, I want the audience to feel this, and they manifest and bring things to life with big picture ideas. And I think a successful event planner, manifester, person moving through life needs to have both skill sets. So it's interesting that, I guess when we're suggested that left arrow, right arrow, it means this is going to come innately, and the opposite way you might have to work a little harder at. All right, I'll give it that. But I mean, one of my friends and I were laughing. We're like, I want all four arrows pointing up, meaning I've got the balance of right and left in all those arenas. Because as a digestion person, I want variety and I want structure. I kind of want it all. So can't we have all our arrows pointing up, Adrienne?
I feel like the variables, which is what the arrows are, they're such a complex, nuanced thing that, and unless you have your basics dialed in really tight, it's the little tweaking. The hill that I'll die on is in classic purist human design, they'll say that the true empath has a undefined emotional center. And if you've got a defined emotional center, then you're not the true empath. And I've seen arguments in forums and stuff like that. And I think this is where we have to reach into the astrology roots of human design. That is one of the components that it was built off of. And if you've got, like, I have a Pisces moon, and you don't get more porous and empathic than a Pisces moon. But I totally can set the tone of a room being that emotional authority. So I think that people, and I think the conversation I had with Dana, who you know as well, was you take the chart as information, but don't label yourself and get attached to it. And I think that that's one of the things that I see out there when people first get into it. Well, I'm a this, so I can't do that. Like, she's a projector, and we in projectors all the time. Well, I need to wait for the invitation. That doesn't mean stay in your house and sit on the couch. That's not what that means. But that is one of the things I noticed. It's like, well, I can't be an empath because I have a defined emotional center. But I think that we have to be careful with the labels, careful about the labels with
I
human design.
100% agree with that. And I love that you recognize, like, when we get the gene keys overlay and we recognize each and everything has the low vibration, the sort of general standard, and then the high vibration, the city. It's the same with having an undefined emotional solar plexus. There's some blessings to that, and there's some burdens to that. And the person who's done the work and woven their way through their understanding of that undefined emotional solar plexus, which I do have, I think I can bring myself a little bit more towards center through strategies.
Exactly. Where do you see people struggle the most when you're giving them their overview?
Where do they struggle the most? Perhaps this theme, and I need to put some thought to it to see if data really supports this. But there's the conscious side, all the gates on the conscious side, and all the gates on the unconscious side. And so, really seeing if the unconscious side feels true to them, like we might expect the conscious side to be just naturally a given. But I need to do a little digging to see if that hypothesis holds true, because there hasn't been one area of struggle that truthfully rises to the top. I had one client who really did not want to be a pure generator. He thought that was not an inspiring type, and he really resisted that. And I kept shining all the spotlights on the highlights of being a pure generator and all the gifts in that. But he's just like, yeah, this whole system is bunk because he didn't like what his type was.
Was it because so much of the population is generators, and
A
he
little
wanted to
bit
feel
that it was that.
more special?
And which, by the way, I've noticed that shifting. Like I used to hear people say, 35% of the population was generators, and then 37, and then 38%. I've seen it shifting, and what I find is it's shifting within certain apps I use. And so my hypothesis is the app is basing it on its universe of users who've done a chart. And
Mm.
if 1% of the population of reflectors aren't stepping forward to do a chart in that app, they're going to show up as less than 1%, when reality might say, based on the way this is distributed across the world in different time zones and different places, it is truly 1%. So I don't know. What do you think about the percentages of like manifesting generators being 31% or 34% or
I think that the underlying message that Ra intended was the majority are either going to be generators or manifesting generators. I think getting
right?
hung up on the exact percentage is a way to, I would question why. Because if you know the bulk of people are going to fall in a generator or manifesting generator bucket, that it's more about, and I've run into this too. It's like, oh, I'm just a generator or just a manifesting generator. They, generally, with manifesting generators, they're like, oh, I can do the manifesting too. The challenge comes more from the generators are like, oh, well, I'm just here to wait till someone tells me what to do, which is so that is such
Right.
a basic that is such a basic bullshit interpretation of what
Yes.
a generator is. I mean, I'm a generator. I'm a 3-5 generator. But in practice, when I'm trying to, if I'm not feeling inspired, I go find something that I can respond to. But I've
Mm-hmm.
learned how to do that. I what the process is for me. And the idea that I can't build something because, or I can't initiate something, I can't go build a business, or I can't do this, that, and the other because I'm not a manifester. And I think some of this comes from a lot of the self help and personal development, spiritual community, whatever you want to call it, have zeroed in and they use the word manifest and manifestation so
Right.
much that people think that, well, if I don't have that part, then I can't create something. And
You're
that's
right.
crap.
You're right. It's been sort of overused and it's got this golden halo on it. What's interesting in the app that I use, I started using it in 2021 and I got the paid version in 2022. And it has visibility into, hey, you're a pure manifester. And it
Mm-hmm.
started off that they were 9% of the population. And over the last 4 years, it's grown. It's now like 13% of the population. And so that's again my theory that, okay, just within the little petri dish of that one app,
Yeah.
data is
That's
getting,
got to be them going off their own data set,
that's
which
it.
I think is an interesting choice as an app, just as an old tech guy.
I wonder what other set of data you would go off of, though, because maybe
I,
really babies weren't born in certain areas where manifestors should be born.
I think that most people, when they teach it, are coming off of what Ra originally said the percentages probably are in the world. I don't remember exactly what he said about the percentages from the lectures, but I think that's where most people, when they teach, are coming from. Now, as far as because the software that I use is Bodygraph,
Mhm.
and I don't remember there being a statistic in there for the percentages and in their data set if they even show that. But the percentages I've always used were from Ra's teachings.
The other thing is the profile. There's 12 different profile
Mm-hmm.
types, and six of them are kind of common, 13 to
Mm-hmm.
14% of the population, and then six of them are pretty rare, like 1, 2, 3% of the
Yeah.
population.
Yeah.
And so I think this is ego getting involved. Like, well, I want to be the special snowflake. I want to be
Yep.
the rare one. I don't
Yeah.
want to be the common one. And
Yep.
it is fascinating because, again, within this app, I'm sure their data set is just their data set. And it does make sense. Manifestors are being drawn to it. So suddenly the bubble that's manifestors, pure manifestors, is growing larger.
It's interesting because that's such a limited view of yourself because we are all incredibly
Everything.
unique. I mean, that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I love astrology. Your astrological natal chart is your natal promise. It tells you everything that's unique about you
Mhm.
and what your challenges are going to be, what your gifts are, all of those things. So It's like your cosmic permission slip. That's what I about the tools, that your astrological chart and your human design chart are like your architecture plans. And so you can take these and stop fighting yourself so much and move in the world with a lot more ease and a lot more meaning, I think.
Yes, I remember getting this permission slip as a manifesting generator that I didn't have to finish every book I started, every series. I would watch like season one, but just not be into season two or three. And then I'd be like, ah, you never complete anything. And now I feel like because you have so many interests, you want to be where your passions are and you don't have to follow everything through to the bitter end. What a
Yep,
relief.
it is. Let's jump to Tachyon for a moment. So tell the audience how this came about, because I know the story, but obviously they don't.
Sure. So when COVID struck that first year of 2020, I felt anxiety growing exponentially in my body, and I knew the tools that I could use to combat it. I was already doing a lot of hiking and movement. I was doing a lot of grounding, and I was a beginner meditator, but I felt that it wasn't all these tools weren't quite giving me the peace that was going to be able to keep this anxiety at bay. And of course, it's a global pandemic. And so there was great reason to have a lot of fear, but I knew it was being very unhealthy. It was in fact impacting my sleep, my relationship with my daughters, my ability to perform at work. So I really started listening in meditation for what are the answers? What are the solutions? And one of the very strong downloads I got was go back to your chiropractor, which I questioned because I thought, I'm moving pretty good. I don't have any body pain. It's all about this fear, but I'll trust it. And I went to my chiropractor, and they're the ones that actually put on my radar that there was something called Tachyon and that I should check it out. And they hadn't been, but they knew I was a curious cat, and they were like, why don't you go see about Tachyon? And I did. Um, so thankfully, I followed the guidance, went to my chiropractor. Always good idea to go to your chiropractor. And they were curious about tachyon, just hadn't explored it. So I made this 4.5 hour road trip
Wow.
to Waynesboro, Virginia, because that was the closest tachyon chamber at the time. And this is in the year 2021. It's in the spring. When I arrived, I was such a skeptic. I took another gal pal, we do a lot of hiking together, and she was a believer. When she saw that there was a room with pyramids and sacred geometry and crystals, she was like, oh, yummy, I'm at home. And I was not into crystals or sacred geometry and pyramids. I was just like, oh, really? Come on, that's so cliche. So I was a skeptic. She went first. I sat in the waiting room and I talked to the man who had built this tachyon chamber. His name is Dr. Joe McNamara, and he's still a great mentor for me today. Medical doctor, trained as an emergency room physician, later opened up a private family physician. And then when he retired, he fed his passion for crystals and opened up the East Coast's in fact, America's first tachyon chamber.
Okay. Wow.
So he and I chatted. I went in to do my session, and I remember thinking, all right, I'm just going to try to suspend my disbelief and let this do whatever it's going to do. But I was not expecting much. And I recognized in the first 3 to 4 minutes as I started to settle and breathe that I was falling into a deeper meditative trance, situation like theta brainwaves quicker than I'd ever done before. And it's kind of scared me a little, Adrienne. I remember thinking, I feel my body melting. That's good. Ooh, I feel the chair kind of melting into the floor. Okay, I'll just be a puddle on the floor. But then the floor started bubbling and gurgling, and I was falling, cycling to like the center of the earth. And I remember I had a momentary thought, I better call him back in and say, Dr. Joe, turn this thing down. Like I'm falling. And I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because an angel came up to my left and an angel came up to my right. And in hindsight, I realized I had my very first like astral travel experience. And the peace I felt and the curiosity and excitement I felt, it was no longer a fear thing. It was now a almost like when you're on a really positive psilocybin or ayahuasca journey, and you're like you're going places and seeing things, and it's not shadow work, but it's like fun and working in the light. That was the first experience for me. And I remember coming out of there thinking, wow, either I fell asleep and had a lucid dream or something profound just happened. My friend had had a great experience. I had had a great experience, and we were headed home the next day. And we're like, can we come back tomorrow? And he said, you can do up to two a day. And we're like, oh, hell yeah, we're going to. So we signed up for Saturday AM PM, Sunday AM PM. We got 4 sessions in before our weekend travel home. And it was on the drive back from Virginia to Charlotte that I remember saying aloud in the car, we have to talk someone into opening one of these in Charlotte. I want to do this all the time. And just, haha, maybe I'll ask my chiropractor, maybe I'll ask my doctor. And I did. I came back to Charlotte, and for about 6 months, I knocked on all the doors, told everyone my experience, couldn't talk anyone into opening a tachyon chamber. And one day, my chiropractor said, well, when you open it, I'll be your first customer. And that planted that little seed of an idea. I was like, I mean, I'd have to find the money, the place, the time, the knowledge. Like, there's so many hurdles, but I'll think on it. Within a week, a lady in my neighborhood was walking her dog down the path one way. I passed her all the time, walking my dog the other way. And she stopped me and she's like, hey, are you looking for a room to rent? And I thought, that's so strange. She must be like doing that Airbnb thing in her home or something. And I'm like, girl, I've got a house down here on the corner. She said, no, I mean for a business. I use the same chiropractor as you. And she mentioned might be looking to open up this like meditation room. And I'm like, Dr. Jenny told you that? Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I am looking for a room to rent. Tell me what you got. And Adrienne, the puzzle pieces from that moment of us passing on the walking trail started to fall into place so quickly and with so much flow. I absolutely knew I was being divinely guided. It took a while for the pieces to really come to fruition and crystallize, but in August of 2022, which was about 18 months after I'd first tried Tachyon, I was opening up Torchbearer Tachyon in Cornelius, North Carolina. And then, if I may, I'll give people an idea of what is this tachyon chamber. So, when you walk into this 12-foot by 12-foot room, you'll see a pyramid hanging overhead. It's made of noble metals, and it's got layers of crystal and sacred geometry with crystals all around you. And you're sort of in what looks like a dentist chair that reclines back. You get to 0 point gravity, and you're laying on a tachyon mat with another one on top of you, and then you're all cuddled in with this big fluffy blanket. You've got a pillow behind your neck, you've got eye mask on, headphones, and it's truly immersive. And you get to just rest in this tachyon field where I would say once people have had like 3 to 5 experiences, they're all astral traveling. But it takes a couple times for that tachyon to really get the alignment built right in their
So,
system.
why don't you explain what tachyon is? Because I don't think most people know.
That's a great place to start. So, in one sentence, tachyon is a subatomic particle that travels faster than the speed of light. And when you're in a field of this intelligence and consciousness, it's literally has a consciousness. It is a 0 point energy field that you can co-create with. You can say, I want to create perfect physical health or mental health or emotional health. And it's going to work on the areas that you are most ready for your best and highest good. So whereas when I go into a room with a Rife machine or a biocharger, like my doctor actually has a biocharger, you tune it to like, hey, I'm working on thyroid today or vision today, or you tune it to the frequency. Tachyon has all frequencies built into it. So think of it like if there's a rainbow with all the colors and then white light has it all inside of it. The tachyon is the white light part of the rainbow.
When you first got the chamber, I was still in shamanic practitioner training, and I felt like I couldn't disrupt that process for me. So I had wrapped that up, and I came and I did a session with the chamber, and it was really interesting because I've done a significant amount of shamanic journeys at this point. And it was similar in regard to the depth almost that you go into with the experience, but it was also very, very different at the same time. It's one of those things that's hard to explain unless you've experienced it. But there was this feeling of being held and witnessed at the same time, and almost like a conversation with divine intelligence, if you will. That was what my experience was, which was really, really interesting. Which I've done similar things in shamanic journeying, but this had a different, I don't know, flavor to it. When I have conversations with people around the different modalities, and I think that you and I have even had this conversation of, you have to find what works for you. And that's the reason why I think that there's so many different modalities out there. I've even talked about this on the podcast too. Tapping is a great modality for a lot of people. I don't resonate with it, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's great that you said that, like, you were kind of skeptical. It's like me. I look at something, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'll give it a shot, but I don't know, right? But staying open to some of these different modalities that may sound a little odd from the outside, whatever it is. This is one of the things I think I talked about in that the episode around corporate. These types of things can alleviate so much suffering if you give them an opportunity. And just because they're not mainstream now doesn't mean that they won't be mainstream in a couple of years, right? But also, in that same regard, you got to trust your own internal compass too, right? What you're moved to try and whatnot. I have zero desire to do ayahuasca. That's just not something that I feel compelled to do or pulled to. I don't know, 2 years from now that might change. But I think staying curious helps us stay sane, and a lot of times.
Yes, yes, yes. And I've had people come for like a little tour who are very earthy, grounded people. I'm thinking of one in particular. She's like a forest bather, takes clients into the woods. And she said, I've worked my whole life to get into my body. And when I'm in the chamber, it feels like it's taking me out of my body and into the cosmos. And that I spent too much time up there already. So I'm ready to be, very tethered and very grounded and earthy. So I totally agree, Adrienne. It's not for everyone. I share with folks, if you're in the area, by all means, come to Cornelius and try it. I've got a client coming next week from Woodstock, Georgia, or people have driven in from Florida and Virginia. But they can also use it remotely. So I have a client in Dubai who knows there's chambers. There's about 19 of them in America, and she could use all of them if she wanted, but she likes the flavor of torchbearer tachyon and does all of her sessions remotely. I even have a local Matthews Mint Hill person who uses it remotely
That's
consistently.
great.
So I
Yeah,
love the
that, I mean,
fact that people have options.
that's exactly right. It was a wonderful experience for me. I still struggle to find the words because it was just really so relaxing, so freeing, so, like I said, held and witnessed at the same time was the energy that I felt during the experience. So, now circling back to our human design, do you work with people and integrate both of those?
So I'm starting to, and I'm also looking to explore that further. And so you and I may be able to have some additional conversations and look for interesting ways. But at this moment, when I do human design readings, people will usually sign up and it's through Zoom. If they're coming for a tachyon chamber session, I usually say, let's do your human design reading first in the chamber. And they'll be in the chair and I'll be in the practitioner's chair. And then I'll say, this can all integrate later. I want you to try to go to, no mind blank as we move you into your actual tachyon chamber session, knowing that all that information will integrate and the right things will resonate and click in when it's time. They don't have to keep it top of mind as they move into their session. I can tinker and maybe do the session first, tachyon first, and then have the human design reading. Or I want to practice with some folks and maybe tinker with them in their home in the middle of Cincinnati, Ohio, getting a human design reading, but having their photograph in the tachyon chamber to see how
I
that
think
might.
I think it would be really interesting to do like a series of sessions where you have the reading and then focus on deconditioning and see what kind of results that would,
That's a
because I mean, when you
beautiful.
learn about human design, damn near close, the first thing is people jump on is, well, I've got to decondition my centers and I want to decondition and embody. Now, in my work, I do that with shamanic healing, but I could see that experimenting with tachyon and helping that process as well. I think that would be a really interesting experiment to do.
I 100% agree. And I look forward to exploring and experimenting, and we can use each other as guinea pigs and try all kinds of stuff out.
In the greater community out there, what is one thing that you wish practitioners see? My son is 17, which is
Mhm.
the gate of opinions. So, of course, I've got lots of them. But I want to hear other people's opinions too.
Yes. What I do see is a trend for practitioners to sometimes think that, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So my friends who are, maybe a reflexologist, so they become like everything can be solved with reflexology, when in truth, there is a whole gamut, but they tend to get so focused on the one tool and not realize, well, what if you mixed Reiki with reflexology? Or what if reflexology and some upgrades in their nutrition or, hypnosis? Like, I love the fact that we have this huge buffet, Adrienne, of so many tools and treasures. And I love encouraging people to try a lot of interesting combinations to really find what resonates for them. So I think the practitioner mistake I might ask to shine a spotlight on is just being so narrowly focused on the thing that they do.
So, did you ever watch the miniseries Discovery of Witches?
Never saw it.
Oh, you need to look at that. Side note, y'all need to look at that too. It was a great
Okay.
series, but there's a scene in there where she has to weave things together energetically in order to make something happen. One of the main characters. And I feel like that is an awesome thing to be able to weave modalities. And maybe you, the practitioner, aren't well versed in multiple modalities, but you can partner with someone that can offer that as well. I think getting hung up of being all things to all people for every little thing is, I don't think that serves anybody. I don't think that serves you as a business owner and a practitioner, and I don't think that serves the clients either. And I think that there's been several times, I can't tell you how many times over the last 13 years, that someone will come to me and I'll be like, I'm not the person for you. But I know this person, this person, this person, this person, I think they would be a great fit. And I would
Mm.
much rather hand someone off than I know that there are other clients coming. I don't concern
Mhm.
myself about that. I'm just more concerned about getting the right fit. And if I can't move into what I consider a neutral space, I'll reschedule something,
Mhm.
especially if it concerns any shamanic healing or something like that.
So smart. And I think we both agree this collaboration energy that we bring to the table is so exciting. When I collaborate to maybe teach a human design class in a salt cave, I know that maybe some of my followers are learning about halotherapy, or when I bring an Akashic record reader that spends the whole day in the tachyon chamber doing Akashic record readings, or hypnotists, which, by the way, full open, transparent, all call for practitioners who want to use the tachyon chamber as a tool in their services. I would love to entertain those conversations, both in person or they can use it remotely.
I think this is something that you do exceptionally well. In fact, when I saw your human design chart, I was really stunned you weren't a 4.
You told me that. I
I was
feel the
super
same.
stunned because your networking is like spark sessions. Like that was the whole thing, right? Adrienne can work a room, y'all. You have no idea. You have no idea.
Thank
She
you.
knows everybody in the area. She connects people. She does referrals out. Like she's awesome about stuff like that.
Thank
And
you.
I love the fact that you just naturally have this way of just putting these different, oh, well, this modality could work with this, but let's see what happens here. And having that openness to do that is such a, I think, a rare quality in the community because you don't see that a lot. Because everybody's like, there's a lot of people that are really protective of that. Not everybody, but I do see that a lot, especially like in the coaching world. It's like, no, I can't
True.
possibly give you a client. Come on,
Thank you for
guys.
witnessing that and seeing me, but also it's a mirror because you embody that. You embody that idea of it's not competition, it's
It's
collaboration.
not.
And
It's not. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Now, don't get me wrong. I've lived that life. I lived that life. And then, like, once you really work with these systems, your natal chart, your human design, etc., once you have your architecture plans and that cosmic permission slip, a lot of the bullshit just falls to the side because you stop arguing with yourself and your nature so much. And when you do that, so much more opens for you. Like I said, it's there's a lot more joy, a lot more bliss, a lot more happiness moments. And but on the flip side, there's a lot less tolerance for the BS too.
yeah, yeah, agreed. Agreed.
I will exit stage left far faster than like 15 years ago. It's like, you know what? You do you. I'm out. Okay,
That's a newer
stupid stuff
lesson for
anymore.
me. Put up with and just withstand a lot of energies that aren't complementary to mine because I love people and I love
You do
learning new
love people.
things and all that stuff. So I'll just tolerate and tolerate bad behavior. And so a newer lesson is to start to make decisions quicker. Like that invitation is a no for me. And not that I wish them any ill will, I
No,
love them
no.
and I detach with love. But it's a
Right.
newer lesson for me, Adrienne.
I don't endeavor to be nice because nice is people pleaser BS. I endeavor to be kind. And sometimes kind can be uncomfortable for people, but that is what the growth is about. So, give me your lightning round three fave pieces of advice around these subjects you want
Ah,
people to
that's
know.
such good prompts. I'm going to say number one, trust this authority over all the books, all the podcasts, all the gurus that might teach you something. When you go into that quiet space and you go within, feeling into your body, your true answers and your wisdom, just encouraging every listener to let that be their true ultimate authority. So that would be where I'd start. Part two is expand your options and be a little more exploratory. Even if you don't have the three, the martyr line in your profile, try some things. I mean, you may have that Big Mac every single time at McDonald's, but what if there's like a steak waiting for you at Morton's and you're like, but I like the Big Mac? What if something even better is around the corner? So just encouraging people to be open and a little bit more experimental, maybe than they're used to. And the third one, wow. I think the third one would be to really prioritize the value of this. What we're doing today in community brings together, Adrienne, this 1 + 1 = 3 expansiveness. And your invitation to do this today, again, I was like giddy all week looking forward to this. But just encouraging people to recognize that, we were not born to have this solo journey. It's all about community. And if they prioritize that, and maybe those projectors who are in their house come out a little bit more, we want to know you, we want to play with you, just to value the community.
I always sign off my podcast to remember to find beauty every day and seek the magic in the mundane. So, how do you do that for yourself?
The way that I embrace that, and I love what your tagline is, is to just slow down the breath and be observant because, like you said, there is magic everywhere. And even the fact that we both lit candles before we started this experience, these tiny little ceremonial things, oops, add magic. And so if we're not noticing the magic that's already there, we're behind the game. But then, Adrienne, we can add that little flourish and add some additional magic to the mundane. And that's how we co-create with the universe.
Yep. Well, tell people how they can get in touch with you.
So the very best pathway directly to my front door is through the website, and it's torchbearertachyon.com, but I'll spell it torchbearers, like carry the torch, Torchbearer. And then tachyon is a weird word. It's Greek for speed, and it's spelled Tachyon. And once they land there, there's all the socials, there's all the events. I host group manifesting circles using Tachyon and the power of the group consciousness. I host human design classes at yoga studios and chiropractic offices and festivals. And I also sometimes do this like sacred rage primal scream ceremony that's kind of new.
Ooh.
There's more information about that on the website too.
I will put links to that in the show notes. And thank you for joining me today. And as always, everyone, remember to find beauty every day and seek the magic in the mundane.
Thank you so much.